Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast, and as always, good people, I am in airplane mode. And now a man whose ancient Roman nickname might have been Diabetes Maximus. A man who needs no introduction. How you doing today, my one black friend?
I'm okay. How are you, Pocket Locker?
I am hanging in there. Let's jump straight into our content today because we're on a limited time. But this guy's name that we're about to hear from is Stormer, and I believe he's a historian. I for sure know he's a historian, and he's going to be talking to us about Ken Burns' new documentary, or more specifically, Ken Burns' post about his new documentary. And then, if we have time, I'm going to try to tie it to a video from the Bearded Beer blog. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this clip, and it's pretty short, so we shouldn't have, if we interrupt it, maybe it'll only be a couple times, but let's try to get through it because, like I said, it's only a few minutes. All right, here we go.
Important event in world history since is the American Revolution the most important event in world history since the birth of Christ? Hey folks, I'm Todd Sturmer. I'm a historian of the American Revolution and resistance history at the University of Southern Denmark and Johns Hopkins.
Can you hear everything okay?
I hear him well, yeah.
I guess I have my audio set up. Let me look at my audio setup real quick. I want to switch to the okay, and then go here. That should be fine. All right.
And the author of Resistance History of the United States. Ken Burns, in an interview with Salon, recently said this.
He said some veer into hyperbole as when he describes the American Revolution as the most important event in world history after the birth of Christ.
The American Revolution was the most significant event in world history since the birth of Christ. I'm not asking you to accept my interpretation of what that means. I'm asking you to sit with the claim itself and think through what it requires you to believe, not just about the American Revolution, but about how history works, whose story matters, and whose framework you're using to make sense of the past.
Also, shout out to Paulie B. Thanks so much for that, Paulie. And Trees, good to see you. Thanks for help as well. Native Atheist, good to see you. Good to see everybody in chat.
Now, Burns' American Revolution is launching now on PBS, and it's getting the kind of attention his work always gets. Respectful reviews, classroom adoption, the assumption that this is how we should understand our history because he's America's storyteller.
So that's the first thing to really consider. Is like Ken Burns is not nobody. Ken Burns, I grew up on Ken Burns' stuff. I think a lot of us did. Very important American documentarian, and I do think that we consider Ken Burns a historian. When I look up Ken Burns, it says he is an American documentary filmmaker, producer, historian, and writer. So people in the audience may be able to already tell like where I'm going with this. I'm gonna let them roll, but the question to me is, what does it mean for? Because like this guy said, a new Ken Burns documentary means it's going to be covered by the media. It's going to be adopted into pop culture. It's going to be adopted into classrooms and be shown to school-age children as, depicted as however he depicts it. So what does it mean for him to be coming from this perspective? But to me, it's a very alarming thing to hear a historian say, because what does it mean for a historian to really just put the birth of Jesus and then the founding of America, like
the American Revolution? I of course I'm always a little bit salty about such things, but which birth of Jesus? There are two in the Bible. Pick one for me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those things. I think he's sort of making his work self-important. Obviously, there are things that were huge, like the transatlantic slave trade. Obviously was more pivotal than the American Revolution, as was the Enlightenment, as were the Dark Ages. Uh, as we are modern Americans, sure, it can mean a lot to us, but and as many people are Christians, the birth of Jesus means a lot to them. Actually, that's not necessarily true, is it? Because like almost 70% of them don't read the Bible on any regular basis. So the idea of the birth of Jesus means a lot to a lot of them. Um, and to some, a lesser degree, it means everything. Uh, again, I just think this is a way to be self-important. I've I've took myriad
I didn't
marketing
think about
classes.
that,
I'm
but
a
I
marketing major.
yeah, I think that's
It's just
yeah,
self-importance. That's
it's a way it's a way that all of us do, which is to sell your work and tell us why your work is important. It
yeah.
definitely just hits me the wrong way for a historian to be citing the birth of Jesus as a historical event when the historians of the event cannot document it as a
They can't
historical
pin it
event.
down.
Yeah. So, you
Yeah.
know, and I think that given the time that we live in, the time of Christian nationalism and all of this, I think it's incredibly problematic for him to legitimize their narrative. Now, I'm not under the impression he's MAGA or like a Trump supporter or anything like that, which is why I extra think this was irresponsible.
But before it becomes the definitive popular narrative, the way his Civil War series ruined people's understanding of that event did, it's worth asking some questions about what his approach actually does. Because this is not new. This is the same framework Burns has used for decades. The Civil War, the national parks, jazz, Vietnam, World War II. Every series centers American nationhood as the organizing principle. The past gets shaped, flattened, and forced into his narrative about what we supposedly share as Americans. But that we isn't neutral. It's not an invitation to complexity. It's a very particular understanding of what America is and should be. Liberal, constitutional, exceptional, redemptive. The nation makes mistakes, but it corrects them. It falls short of its ideals, but it bends toward justice. The framework is always the founding established something unprecedented, and American history is the story of gradually realizing those founding principles.
Yeah, and just for the record, I think those narratives are really problematic. I see them as American theology. I see them as myth making in action. I do not think those things are true, because things can always get worse. And in America, things do always get worse. And things can be reversed, and things are getting reversed. I want to say, I say this to my students. I said this to my students. If you would have told me when I was growing up that the generations coming up behind us are the children's, that those women would not have reproductive choice, I would have thought that was crazy. Because I grew up in a time where that was precedent, that was history. And again,
Mm-hmm.
people saw that as a step in the right direction. And so our mythology was such that we can't go backwards. So how, what do you mean in the future, the future generation is not going to have reproductive choice? Are you crazy? Okay. The guns, y'all. The guns, y'all. I always say this. When I was going through grad school, there should have been two things central to my training as a biologist. Number one, biology. Yeah, if you're going to be a biology professor / biology researcher, yeah, we think it's kind of important, at least a little bit of biology. So we need to put you in some classes, how you do some exams, make sure you're a little bit of biology. Oh, and then this other thing over here, yeah, that's called teaching. Yeah, if you're going to be a professor, yeah, you're going to need to know some biology, and then we're going to need you to learn how to teach. But somehow, gang, part of the equation was mass shooter training. Part of the equation was how to modify the room, how to board up the doors, how to cover the windows, how to tell your children to take cover, how to call 911, and then consider whether or not you're willing to die for one of your children today. That somehow that was part of my training, gang. And now part of my training is what to do with ICE if ICE shows up and tries to black bag one of my students in the middle of class. Such to the point that in the bathrooms at the school, at the college, we have what to do if ICE shows up all over the damn campus. So
Wow.
things can always get worse, and we can always be going in a direction that doesn't make sense. And then also, I feel like even when things do move in the right direction, we do a problematic thing when we give ourselves credit as Americans, because I think we're part of a more global kind of socialization. And so a lot of times we're like, oh, look at America, we did this. But if we looked at it in the global context, to be clear that one, we weren't really leading the charge. Two, like the rest of the world is making similar strides. And three, we usually late to the party. Like right now, how much credit would America give itself if it was like, we made a free option for college and we decided to have universal health care and we decided to have a universal basic income? Again, we'd be late to the party. We would be late to the party. Other places in other parts of the world have already figured out that that's the way to go. So when we kind of create this myth, it's like we give ourselves credit as though we're leading the charge, when really a lot of times we're lagging behind.
It's the way Apple does the iPhone. Isn't this innovation we have in our new phone really amazing? That's great. Android's had that for 6 years now, 14 years. And yeah, but this is an Apple product. Well, whoop de freaking do, guys. Whoop de freaking do. We finally got our ducks in a row where we could have what everybody else already had. Lovely. Lovely. Stock goes straight up. That I've been fortunate enough to live in other countries, for an extended period of time. Not everybody can do that. Most Americans stay, actually, most people probably stay within 100 miles of the town where they grew up. Like they spend their entire life, or nearly all but a few days of their entire life in that small area. Living in other countries gave me a perspective of what poverty could be. I remember I was in the Republic of Georgia. Then it was called Georgia, still is. But I was there and I saw a skinny cow. I saw a building that had been bombed by a Russian missile and still had the hole in it. And we were filming there, and people came out. They were in the building and they would look out through the hole to watch what we were doing. And if I could explain the scope of what we were doing, probably not supposed to talk about it, you would wonder why all these people were looking, because they were probably terrified of what we were doing there. Like, why are you here? Why is all this going on? Anyway, I've been in Bulgaria. I've been in Anguilla. What an island paradise Anguilla is. If you can save up, you should go. But it gives you perspective as to what poverty is and what care is, and how when I was in Bulgaria, I got quite sick. The doctor came to my hotel. The bill was, I forget how small the bill was. Like, I couldn't believe how small the bill was for the doctor coming to my hotel. When I was in Anguilla, I nearly died. Again, I got the bill from the hospital. It was tiny. And they said, if you were a resident of this country, there'd be no bill. They only billed me because they knew the company would pay for it. That's basically what I was told. You wouldn't get a bill otherwise if you just lived here. And I think one of my associates knew the right people. I didn't have to get a bill. If that guy didn't want me to have one, I wouldn't have got one. But we can forget that other people have figured this out, right? We live in a time where funding for the VA, for our veterans, to take care of them, is being cut. And there are people who see that as progress, as opposed to somebody trying to be brilliant and figuring out a way, hey, these people defended our nation, or these people went to fight somebody's stupid war so they can make a buck. Why don't we look after them? We as a nation. Other countries have figured it out. Other countries have figured out that, hey, we have all these citizens. Maybe we owe it to them, since we're taxing them, to take care of them and give them better health care, make sure the drinking water is clean, make sure that the products they use are safe. Those things are being dialed back in this current administration, and it is being seen as a victory by many. But it's a victory that ultimately will cause great losses. And the people of today don't see it. I'm going to draw this to sort of Christian nationalism for a moment. Many Christian nationalists, if you are one and you're seeing this, please read the book of Revelation, where it talks about what happens to the people that have destroyed the earth, meaning their habits have destroyed the earth, right? Their actions have destroyed the earth. It doesn't turn out too well for them. They don't get to go to heaven. They go somewhere else, and there's only two options. So, sadly, that warning is ignored. Like so much of the Bible that would make America a better country to live in if it were followed. And we have so many Christians that you wonder why it isn't a better place already. I can tell you it's because those things, though we are told those values are held dear, they're not actually practiced in great volume by the people of this nation. And we have people who actively, with the good stuff that Jesus said, right? They're still opposed to free lunch for little kids.
Let's keep going.
Telling those kids they have to go to school.
You're gonna get me go. You're gonna get me going on a rant. And I don't want to.
Okay,
I don't want to.
but anyway, the idea. I'll circle back, Pocket Elector. The idea that America, I can, my daughter can take a few steps on her own right now. And when she does, it's kind of a big deal. We're applauding her. We give her lots of praise. And yet, we were at a restaurant this morning. I wasn't applauding the other people that were walking around. You know what? I know you're 72 years old. You're doing a fantastic job. Look at you walk. America, with this Ken Burns sort of thing, that's sort of what he's doing. Aren't we so wonderful? We got our ducks in a row. We're a country now. We have our independence compared to everybody else who's already done it. We're not innovating. The framers and the founders of the United States Constitution weren't thinking up only brand new ideas. They used existing ideas and applied them to the people.
And they sucked.
Property here.
I'm sorry. I'm getting angry. I'm sorry.
So here's the question I think you
upset.
should ask as you approach Burns' American Revolution or any of his work.
Don't want to talk about the founders.
One, if you believe the American Revolution was the most significant event in world history since the birth of Christ, what's that actually mean? What happened in those, 1,800 years that mattered less? The fall of Rome, the rise of Islam, the Renaissance,
This is what
the
you were
Scientific
talking
Revolution,
about.
the Enlightenment, the French Revolution. What are you saying about the rest of human experience when you make that claim? What kind of historian are you? What does it mean that the timeline runs from Christ to America and that these are your two coordinates for understanding history? Even after a career of doing it, you can make that claim. 2. Whose history becomes peripheral or irrelevant in that framing? If the American founding is the pivot point of modern history, what happens to Asia, Africa, Latin America, the Islamic world? What happens to indigenous peoples except as obstacles to the nation's expansion, a big point of his national parks series? What happens to the enslaved except as a problem the nation had to overcome? Does everyone else's history only matter insofar as it relates to America's story and his framing within that? 3. What worldview does this framing assume? Is this a secular claim about political significance? Or is there a theological element to it? Does it require you to see Western Christianity as the universal framework for human history? Does it make American nationhood the culmination of some larger purpose? Democratic inevitability, the fulfillment of Enlightenment ideals, the political expression, maybe even of a divine order? 4, what does it mean that this framing appears in liberal nationalism, not just conservative evangelical nationalism? Burns isn't a Christian nationalist. He's a liberal institutionalist. He believes in pluralism, democratic norms, constitutional government, and yet his story still centers Christianity and American exceptionalism as the twin poles of world history. What does that tell you about what liberal nationalism requires to sustain itself? What does it need the founding to be in order to justify a kind of constitutional worship? 5, how does this framework determine what counts as legitimate political action? This is especially important for resistance history. If the American Revolution is somehow a model for legitimate change, flattened, what happens to resistance movements that reject and have rejected that model? What happened to the abolitionists who said the Constitution itself was the problem, no union with slaveholders? Or to labor organizers who challenged property rights and early world as anarchists, to civil rights activists who insisted on immediate action rather than gradualism? Are they just extremists, outside agitators, threats to the constitutional order, precisely because they won't accept the founding as the boundary of legitimate resistance? And I guess last, what does Burns' approach do to complexity? His work is exhaustively researched, beautifully produced, emotionally powerful. But does it invite genuine complexity about the past? Or does it force everything into a narrative of shared national identity? Does it let the past be strange, contingent, contested? Or does it smooth contradictions into a story about American becoming? Can you have a revolution led by enslavers that's the most significant event since Christ without flattening what that actually means?
Come on
and then
now.
I guess that leads you maybe to an additional question. What is Burns asking you to believe about the founding? Is 1776 an event in history? Contested, contingent, the product of specific circumstances and interests, or is it a sacred origin? The moment when something unprecedented and universal came into being? Is the Constitution a political compromise that protected slavery by design, or is it a breakthrough document that established enduring principles? Your answer determines whether the resistance to the constitutional order is legitimate or heretical. So how does this framing shape what happens next? Burns' series will become the narrative millions of people use to understand the revolution. It'll show up in classrooms and political speeches, maybe even in Supreme Court opinions citing the founders' intent. It'll reinforce or challenge how we think about protest, institutional authority, the limits of legitimate political action. So what does it mean if the framework is already locked in? If the revolution must be exceptional, the founding must be redemptive, the nation must be the center of its own story. Again, I'm not telling you what to think about Burns' work. I'm asking you to approach it with these questions in mind. To think about what his framework assumes, what it erases, what it requires you to accept about American nationhood and its place in history. Because this isn't just about one documentary series. It's about how nationalist historiography works, how it makes the nation's origins sacred, how it determines what counts as legitimate history and legitimate resistance, how it treats dissent from the founding narrative not as intellectual disagreement, but as a threat to its shared identity. Take a look at my comment sections one of these days. You can watch Burns' American Revolution and find it moving, informative, beautifully crafted. You can appreciate the research and the storytelling, but you can also ask what work that story is doing, what worldview it assumes, what it needs you to believe about America's place in history, and what it makes impossible to see or say. And those questions don't have easy answers. That's the point. That's kind of why I do what I do. But I do want you to sit with them, see where they lead. Decide for yourself what it means to claim that 13 colonies breaking from Great Britain was more significant than anything else that happened in 1800 years of human history. And then ask yourself, whose history is that? What does it serve? What does it make you believe about the world? And then
that's so good. That's so good. So good. All right, y'all. So look, let's try to tie these two threads together real quick, because I want to see if we get this other piece in here. So I haven't seen the documentary. It's premiering today. I think, we'll check it out. It'll be significant. I don't think anybody's seen it. So let's just keep that in mind. So the response is, I thought the video was very clever. And it was, like I said, it was a response really about what he said. And I think what he said deserves our attention, because it does make this other point. I often describe this being between a rock and a hard place. And I've said previously on this show that part of the problem here is that we have the Christian nationalist on one side, and then the people that supposedly want to oppose them are more Christian. They want to be even more Christians, right? We think of them as being the actual real Christians, right? They're the ones who go to church and do the backpack drives and the soup kitchens and love the gospel. And so the problem then becomes, we can't address the reality or lack thereof behind Christianity, because even though we need that to take down the Christo-fascism of the right, we can't do it because it would also tear down the liberal Christo-fascism of the left and of the entire American narrative, right? And that's a problem. See, it's not even, it's left, right, center, doesn't even matter. It's like everybody's bought into this narrative. And so what does it mean when our historians literally are going to compare the American Revolution and have it on a straight historical through line to the birth of Christ? To literally say, these are the two pillars, not of some church sermon, but of the history of the world, right? And so all of that bullshit, quite frankly, is just something, it's like we're not really willing to grasp, because so many people are not ready to decouple faith and theology from history. So many people accept this as historical narrative, and that's a huge problem. I'm gonna let you get in here, and then we're gonna switch it on up so we can keep moving.
Well, thank you. It's interesting to tie faith into it, I guess. I think you've heard me say, I think probably nearly every listener we have, if you've listened more than 3 episodes, you've heard me say religion is useful. It's very useful, and it's extremely useful to control people. What you get as a politician, let's say, or a Ken Burns, there is a I'm just using Christianity, I'm not picking on Christians, but having heard a number of sermons or read portions or even the Bible in its entirety, there is a series of pre-installed responses in your mind, pre-installed guides in your mind. So it makes one easier to manipulate, because as a politician, I could say a sentence that I know you can finish. The average person in the pew could finish that sentence for me. And if I do that enough, it builds trust. I have to know that you probably won't remember everything, like things about communion. You shouldn't take communion if you have been unrighteous, because it could bring God's wrath on you. Do most people remember that in the Bible? Probably not, right? They probably don't remember that. They probably remember, I'm supposed to do this. So the do's are easy to remember. The don'ts are harder. That's why people settle on there being 10 commandments as opposed to 613. Well, I adopt all that. But the ability for one to love Jesus, and then politicians to pump the idea that this nation is developed as a result of the will of God, and God is looking out for us, and God is taking care of us. That is a powerful link, not only to establish, but maintain. It's super easy to maintain it.
Yeah,
It's
and just
super
to
easy to establish.
and just to keep us moving, we should establish, because I want to play this. We should establish it's a powerful lie, and that's the problem. The problem is we need to address the fact that it's a lie, and we can't address the fact that it's a lie if our historians are going to literally try to make it history, right? Like that. Matter of fact, I should say this: that's the Christian privilege in this country. That is the Christian white privilege, to historicize your theology. I just thought of that.
This is not sponsored by Yeti.
Yeah, right.
Cars.
Right, it's 2025. We've got self-driving cars. AI writes your shopping lists. Billionaires are trying to colonize Mars. And people literally use virtual reality to escape reality. And yet somehow, we still have people clutching at their pearls because someone loves who they love, identifies as who they are, or has...
Also, hey, Ember and Bree, apostate sisters. Also, just want to say hi, Satan's little helpers. Good to see you.
darker skin than them. Seriously, how? How are we even still here? What century are you lot living in? Did you miss the global update? Was there a PowerPoint slide that flashed by too quickly that said, hey, basic decency is mandatory now? Because at this point, the only explanation for racism, homophobia or transphobia is sheer weapons-grade stupidity, industrial strength ignorance, a level of nonsense so refined it should come with its own hazard label. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, stupidity of Olympic calibre, record-breaking. If ignorance were a sport, some of you would have sponsorship deals. What exactly are you afraid of?
Sponsored by
That
Yeti.
someone's gender identity will make your sofa non-binary? That your Wi-Fi will transition? That your Alexa will start reading James Baldwin instead of Jordan Peterson? Or that someone else's melanin is somehow contagious and you'll wake up diverse? It's like watching toddlers scream at fucking shadows, except the toddlers usually learn after a while. These people, they double down. They go online. They make a YouTube channel about it. Meanwhile, people are just trying to live, to exist, to find joy. And you're having an existential meltdown because someone's married their partner, changed their pronouns, or dared to celebrate their culture. Newsflash, it's not about you. It never was about you. Someone existing differently doesn't erase your existence. You don't lose your masculinity because someone else found theirs. You don't lose your whiteness because someone else is proud of their heritage. You don't lose your rights because someone else finally got theirs. But apparently, empathy is a limited edition collector's item. A rare Wankamon card. Only a few of you managed to get. Grow the fuck up. And then there's the hypocrisy. Oh my
I'm gonna drop the
favourite
link in
section of
chat
the
for
human
y'all.
condition. The same people shouting about freedom of speech and my rights are the ones losing their minds about someone else's actual freedom showing up. They'll cry about government overreach while campaigning to control bathrooms, borders and other people's bodies. They'll shout family values while disowning their own queer kids or marrying into families that pretend their racism is just old-fashioned charm. The irony is practically radioactive. You're terrified that someone else's happiness, safety or equality somehow threatens yours. If your worldview is that fragile, it deserves to fucking collapse under its own cowardice. If your identity only exists when someone else's doesn't, then what you've got isn't an identity, it's a superiority complex wrapped in insecurity.
And just quickly, because I want to keep them rolling, so we can get it finished in time. This is the problem with the Ken Burns thing. It's we cannot get these people to understand how wrong they are if you tell them that what they believe is history. If you tell them that, oh yeah, actually America is this wonderful Christian nation and it is the most important thing since the birth of Jesus, that's not
I
helping.
know, the excuses.
It's just how I was raised.
Brilliant. So was everyone else. The difference is, most people grew up. We don't still think thunder is the gods being angry, or the earth is flat. Evolution isn't biological, it's moral too.
It's against my beliefs.
Okay, then believe it privately. No one's forcing you to change your gender, your sexuality, your faith, or your haircut. But when you start using your beliefs to justify cruelty, that is not faith. That's moral cosplay. You're not righteous, you're just a bigot with Wi-Fi and an audience. And then the classic.
Bigot
It's
bandwidth.
unnatural.
Oh, fucking please. You're typing that nonsense on a device powered by lithium in a house with central heating, wearing clothes dyed with synthetic chemicals. You left natural behind somewhere around your third booster shot in your last Deliveroo. And then the pièce de la résistance.
I'm entitled to my opinion, man.
Sure, and I'm entitled to call it what it is. Ignorant drivel dressed up as free speech. Opinions are for pineapple on pizza, not people's rights to exist. You don't get to demand respect while refusing to give it. You don't get to punch down on queer people, trans people, people of of colour, and then cry censorship when someone calls you out. Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from consequences. If your expression makes the world worse, then maybe the world doesn't need your expression. Maybe it needs
There it
your
is.
fucking silence. At the end of the day, it's not complicated. People just want to live, love, and be seen for who they are. No one's coming for your family, your job, your masculinity, or your religion. They just want to exist without being treated like a threat. And the fact that in 2025, that still needs explaining, that is fucking tragic. It's like watching someone fail the same exam every century. Racism, homophobia, and transphobia aren't opinions. They're confessions. Every time someone spouts that shite, what they're really saying is,
I'm terrified of what I don't understand and I refuse to learn.
social media, the world's loudest megaphone for mediocrity. And this is coming from me. The greatest enabler of stupidity. Again, coming from me. You can scroll for 5 minutes and watch humanity disprove its own intelligence. Comment sections under Pride posts, Black History Month, or news about a trans athlete are like walking through a museum of human failure. Some takes are so catastrophically dumb they deserve a plaque.
Here lies ignorance, preserved since 1950, still thriving in the comments.
You'll see people typing
This isn't natural.
on devices made in factories halfway across the world. You'll see people shouting
We're losing our culture.
while watching Netflix and eating sushi and wearing Nike. The irony could power a small city. And the fear. Oh, the fear. This is what drives it all. Fear that the world is moving forwards without them. Fear their outdated
And it
worldview
is.
is finally being left to the rust in history's compost bin. But here's the truth. The world will move on without you. It's been doing it for centuries. Civilizations evolve, societies grow, humanity learns.
And this is
Slowly,
this
painfully,
is the challenge for us, gang. The world has already moved on without these people. It's done, gang. We evolved. The planet's billions of years old, and the universe is even older than that. Maybe not much, but it's within the same range, gang. Like it's just done. We learned about sex and gender. Guess what? The Bible was wrong. Surprise, surprise.
Shocking. Surprise, surprise.
The planet is not flat. and I'm being so for real. This is the but on the other side, I got Ken Burns, America's storyteller and historian, that still wants to do the foundation of the great white America, to lead the civilized nations of the world was the most significant thing since the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Like,
yeah,
it's over. Bro, it's over. Sorry.
It's just hype. The sad thing is, this documentary will be seen by millions of people for sure, and beloved, and then everything in it will be taken as true and probably uncolored, right? It will be like, this is the unfiltered truth. It actually happened exactly as we are seeing and hearing in this documentary. And there's a limited number of opinions to counter it. It's sad to see. We live in a time we can hear the mandates, see the mandates, where history is being asked to be. People are asking to erase history. Take that off.
Yeah,
that didn't happen. It happened this way. These people were involuntary servitude. They weren't slaves. There's a difference. The difference is what we say. I've commented that I think somebody has told people in the Trump administration or the Project 2025 people that we ought to practice the Great Society, right? The idea of a great society. It has a founding myth of perfection, and that's where we're always trying to get back to, the former perfection that existed when this nation was founded.
All right, I'm gonna hit this so we can finish it. But I would say the crazy part is I don't think anybody had to. I think you're right about the founding myth, the centrality of the founding myth, but it's like it's so assumed in that group that nobody even had to tell them. But I
And the
share your
ones who refuse to
curiosity
evolve,
about
they
that.
just get louder, meaner, and more irrelevant. And the performance of morality, that one deserves an Oscar. The people who posture like saints online but treat others like sinners offline. They say, love thy neighbour, until the neighbour is black, gay, trans, or an immigrant. Then suddenly the Bible becomes optional reading. Their morality isn't moral, it's branding. And underneath that brand, small, bitter, fearful humans who can't stand seeing others free, loved, or visible. And then there's the so-called culture wars. Oh yes, the grand delusion. People acting like a trans person using a bathroom or a mixed-race couple existing is somehow the fucking apocalypse. You're not in a war. No one's invading your identity. You're just upset the world stopped revolving around you. Your latte won't turn gay. Your football team will not dissolve because the new coach is black. Your national anthem won't lose its key because someone uses they, them pronouns. Relax! You're not being erased. You're just being asked to share the stage. And now the part that people like to avoid, the
Can I comment on?
consequences. Because this isn't rhetorical.
Can you
This is
pause it? Can you pause it, please? I think he's obviously sort of making the same point again and again and doing it well. Bad Bunny comes to mind because he's expected to perform at the Super Bowl, and there are people saying, "Oh, like this, shouldn't we have somebody who's American do it or somebody who's white do it? Isn't it time that we've had that again?" Not necessarily focusing on the idea that the Super Bowl is big business. And it is 100% about that. And their idea is to get the biggest market share of the audience and make as much money as possible every year. They're not trying to be insulting to anyone. They're not trying to leave someone out. This isn't an attempt to make someone feel bad or that white people should feel less than or anything of that nature. It's about money. What he's talking about is that people, by and large, who are opposing other people having equal rights are essentially shaming themselves by letting other people know that they have a problem with that. But that's it. I'm thinking of the King of the Hill episode where Hank says to Bobby about somebody else, his parents never taught him shame. And that's where we are. A lot of these people, and I deal with a few of them on Facebook, I say they're addicted to shame because the ease at which myself and others put them in their place, including the guy, and I don't know that he's necessarily a racist, he's just a right wing sort of militant guy. I tell him, like, you misspelled moronic. Why do you think you did that? You know, why? Now, when he asks himself that question, if he reads it aloud, he ought to be pretty embarrassed about that. But the fact that he's trying to make other people feel less than on a near constant basis, and the lead racist of the whole team over there, he's trying to make people feel less than on a near constant basis. And I point out, this is how you feel. And he is actively trying to recruit other people into feeling just as crappy as he does. And we see this over and over and over again in our modern society. People actively trying to devalue other people. And when it's all said and done, the most they could possibly get out of it is not more company, but just other people echoing what they have been saying, right? They locate the echo chamber, which doesn't progress them. It doesn't move anything forward. It doesn't move them forward. It doesn't move the world forward. It doesn't move the people who are being oppressed, actually being oppressed. It doesn't move them forward either. Those people probably have kind of figured out how to move forward, which is what's pissing these other people off because they can't get it together to move forward. Right? They can't move past their own hate, their own fears, their own failures. So let's drag people in to feeling just as bad as we do. That's their MO. This guy's doing a good job of pointing that out.
Yeah, all right. That's awesome. Yeah, he's only got 2 minutes left, so let's finish it up.
Debate club. This is real life. Racism, homophobia, and transphobia hurt people. They kill people. They deny jobs, safety, housing, education, dignity. They make kids afraid to go to school, adults afraid to exist in public, and families afraid to hold hands. All because some sad, angry little person feels threatened by someone else's humanity. And here's the kicker. It ruins them too. Carrying that much hate erodes you from the inside out. You can't even enjoy a cup of coffee without scanning the room for something to despise. It's pathetic. Self-inflicted misery disguised as morality. You can explain science, psychology, sociology, everything, and they'll still come back with,
But it's unnatural.
or
It's against my beliefs.
it's not ignorance anymore. It's arrogance. It's willful stupidity. To believe your personal discomfort outweighs someone else's right to live, that's not moral conviction. That's moral rot. It's like arguing the sky is green because your grandma said so, except worse, because your ignorance actually costs lives. And the performative moralists, the one who love a good finger-wagging headline, they'll scream about virtue signalling while literally doing the same thing, just with worse branding. The moral outrage isn't conviction, it's content. And cowardice underpins all of it. Easier to hate from a distance than to be kind up close. Easier to retweet cruelty than to ask for empathy. And silence. Oh, silence. That's the most comfortable form of complicity. Silence protects the bully, not the bullied. Neutrality is just privilege pretending to
There
be
it
peace.
is.
You want to be racist, homophobic, or transphobic in 2025? Fine. Be defeated by your own smallness. Let your prejudice be your epitaph. Let the rest of us build something better while you rot in your echo chamber. If I could, I'd take racism, homophobia, transphobia, those cowardly, petty ideologies, and put them on a boat. Not the people, the ideas. I'd shove them off the coast and let them drift endlessly in the ocean of irrelevance.
All right, gang. So now we'll close out with this. Here's where I severely disagree with him. And it is its own form of liberal myth making and propaganda. I agree with everything he said up until this point, except people are not trying to get rid of your religion. I am personally trying to get rid of your religion, and I'm trying to do it immediately. With immediate effect, you need to undedicate your life to Christ. But here's the reality, gang. It is, first off, the silence thing. That's the death of this community. The people who are privileged and comfortable, and then even within what's supposed to be a secular community, an atheist community, a humanist community, we end up with the same patriarchy, the same racism, the same misogyny, the same transphobia, all of that stuff we see play out in our spaces all the time. And so much of it is because so many people are just comfortable sitting on the sidelines and don't want to take a stand on anything. But where I disagree with him fundamentally is, think about the problem with the war on drugs. Think about the problems with the war on terror. You can't fight wars against ideas and drugs won't get on the boat. The problem with the war on terror is you have to fight the people you label terrorists. And so when we said we're going to fight the war on terror, that allowed us to think we could go to war against an idea and overlook the fact that we're really going to war against people. When we fought a war on drugs, again, we thought we were going to war against the substances. We're going to fight a war. We're going to end heroin and cocaine. But what actually ended up happening was mass incarceration, international wars based on drugs, and in the whole 9 yards. So people have to understand that the easiest thing for racists to do, for bigots to do, for transphobes to do, is say, okay, well, you want to change my mind? Well, guess what? I'm not willing to change my mind. And since you're unwilling to actually go to war or do anything to people, all they have to do is refuse to be convinced. And that is where the enabling of the weaponized ignorance comes from. So what the real motherfuckers that really want to be down, that really want to be on the right side of history have to understand is, what you really do is say, we're getting rid of racism, we're getting rid of prejudice, we're getting rid of bigotry, we're getting rid of patriarchy. Now, what we're going to do is we're putting everybody who don't agree with us on the boat. So this is your last opportunity to change your mind. You can change your mind and get with us, Or yeah, unfortunately, gang, we're gonna have to put the motherfucking people on the boat. Because again, you can't fight a war against racism. It's not going to get on the vote. You can't fight a war against patriarchy. Again, patriarchy is not going to get on the boat. So the only way to get rid of it is you have to change the minds of the people who are doing it, or you have to get rid of those people. And that is where the liberal myth making comes in. Liberal myth making is I'm never against the people. I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. It's like Christianity. It's like I love my enemies. I'm gonna pray for those who persecute me, and I'm never gonna bring any consequences to them. I just really want them to change their minds. And I know he wasn't trying to say that, but I hear this so much from liberal white people. I'm sorry. I hear it every fucking day. And look, y'all have to understand, again, you can't fight wars against ideas and concepts. You have to understand that patriarchy, racism, misogyny, classism, all of that stuff, y'all, those are ideas held by people. And so either the people have to change their minds, or we got to get rid of the people. Sorry, I just think that's the reality of it. My one back friend, I'm gonna let you wrap us up because I know you got to get out of here.
No, I think, thank you, by the way. I think I said my piece. Sadly, the people who are actively trying to make it worse for everyone are problematic. The people who need to see things from the other person's perspective should try to empathize with other people. My father used to say all the time when I was a kid, sort of like a indigenous American proverb, you'll never understand someone else until you've walked a mile in their moccasins. In other words, put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you want to understand their circumstances, you have to put yourself in those circumstances, or at least imagine yourself with their circumstances to kind of get it, where they're coming from, so that you can best deal with that person, be it helping them meet their needs or just helping them get out of their own way, helping them recover after a rough patch. Really understanding that is a powerful thing. And some people, all they need to do is just sit there with them so they know they're not alone, right? If you are a person wrestling with your prejudices, good, better you wrestle with them than just say, hey, I'm going to stay in the rut where I was and never become a better person. Go ahead and wrestle. But if you already know that, having not wrestled prior to that, you were losing out all along. I do wonder, based on that guy's video, might it be smart to at some point wash your hands of some people and just move on? Just realize, you know what? You're not going to change because this makes you feel important. It's not what makes you important, but
To
it's
be
what
honest,
makes
I
you feel
think
important.
I
Go ahead.
I think liberals have. I think a lot of us are either former evangelicals or we were raised in the evangelical milieu. And I think people really do struggle with the idea of leaving people behind. And part of it
I
is
do.
a certain degree of paternalism. It's a certain degree of looking down at others, a certain degree of like, I'm smarter than other people, or I know how they should be better than they do. And it's like this thing that it's like this refusal to accept that they may be aware of everything you're aware of, knowledgeable of the same details you are, and they just don't care, or they just don't have the same values, or they just don't give a damn about those people, or they're just too stuck on stupid, whatever it might be. But yeah, we have a really hard time accepting that there's a reasonable effort to change people's minds, and that's fine. And then after that, you have to move in spite of them. And you may have to cut them off, and the other thing, and I'll close with this, is just to say, I think it's really effective. I think the sad part about people not being willing to do that is that that's exactly what we need to do to leave them alone. I'll tell you what I really feel about Christians and fascists and believers and conservatives and all of those people in a nutshell. It's no fun for them if they're by themselves. What they need, what they thrive on is the attention of the rest of us. The rest of us basically acting as though we can't move society forward without them, and therefore we now have to play their game, and we have to convince them to do things our way, which gives them an opportunity to try to convince us, and it just, that is what feeds into their ego. What will actually get them to walk away is when it's like, wow, the world has literally moved on without us and nobody cares. People are just ignoring our church. When we preach to them about the Bible, they just laugh at us and move on. They just drive by. They just say, no, thanks, I'm not interested. Oh, that's cute. Yeah. No, I don't. Sorry, I don't believe in fairy tales. I'm grown. When they get treated that way, that religion will be over in no time.
Pocket Locker, do you have your phone handy?
Yeah.
Can you look and see if I texted you that Thomas Sewell quote that somebody put on Facebook?
No,
you don't see it.
I don't think so. Thomas Sewell is gross.
Well, he. So, folks, let me see if I can find. I can't do it. On my phone.
Let
me see if it's on my iPad. I doubt it. Let me see. I thought I sent it to you. I sent you a lot of stuff recently. My iPad's sort of full. I don't think it's saving things.
What's the quote about?
It's about being rational, taking a rational approach to things. Okay. I am pretty sure.
I think of him as like the predecessor to Clarence Thomas.
I'm 100% sure I didn't send it to you.
Okay.
So, by the way, iPad does a pretty good job of lighting. Okay, so essentially it was about taking, one of my Christian friends put it up on his Facebook where we're talking about taking a rational approach to looking at things. He posts a lot of religious things, and I simply said to him, if I applied this approach to reading the Bible, I'd be an atheist. Snakes don't talk. The world is not flat. And I just went on and on pointing out things from his own Bible, comparing them to, putting them on the other side of the lens that he posted there. I think we all need the courage to make people look at what they say represents their point of view and help them realize what this really means if you look at it that way. Circling back to the two topics, if people really think that, the establishment of the United States was the most pivotal moment in 1800 years since, Jesus was born, they don't know history. They just don't. And they have to realize there's a lot more to know than they know. And if a person is, to follow what the bearded guy says, is if a person is thriving on hate, they have already left themselves behind. And it shouldn't take too many words to get them to realize it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll close with that.
All right, gang. Love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Want to thank everybody that was active in the chat, and thank all of the mods. If you're watching later, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and go ahead and answer the question of the day in the comment section. We have a link down in the description to join our Discord, or you can also come check out our work adventure, which is our live headquarters. that's probably where I will be the remainder of the day. All right. We will see you next time. Also, don't forget tomorrow night at 8, we'll be on Skeptic Haven for Black Free Thinkers. All right, gang. As always, be good.